I knew she worked really hard and had, a following of students, but I had no idea about the depths of her impact on, society, on women, on, African Americans, and just pushing everything forward for engineers.
My name is Linda Lorelle, and I'm asking you to have the courage to listen with an open mind to all of our voices, because our voices matter. Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle, and this is Our Voices Matter podcast. Today's episode is a very personal one for me. I'm actually interviewing my first cousin, Carol Lawson. It turns out that Carol's mom, Yvonne Clark, was a pioneer in the field of science and engineering. Now, of course, I knew Yvonne growing up. She was my cousin Yvonne. I loved her dearly. And I had absolutely no idea when I was growing up the incredible work and that she was doing and the incredible, literally groundbreaking, pioneering woman that she was. So fast forward to today, and the fabulous podcast called Lost Women of Science is chronicling the remarkable story of my cousin, Carol's mom, Yvonne Clark. That podcast is ongoing as we speak. And part of my purpose here today is to promote it and get you to go listen to that podcast. They're doing some incredible work. But then I also want you to listen to this one, because Carol and I talk about what it was like for her to grow up with her mom doing these incredible things and seeing the impact that she has had and continues to have in our world today. I'm so excited for you to listen to this podcast. So let's get to it. Okay, here we go. Hey, cuz, it's good to see you.
How are you doing?
I am doing great. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. And so, audience, you should know that Carol and I are first cousins. And we spent a lot of time together in our youth, mostly during the summers, when our families would visit each other. I was living in Chicago, and Carol, you were in Nashville for most of that time,
all
right? Yes, all of it. Okay. And so we recently sort of reconnected over this incredible podcast series that features your sweet mom, Yvonne Clark. So, Carol, I have to ask you, first of all, when you were growing up, did you have any idea what a badass your mom was and what she was doing with her life?
Girlfriend, no. Okay. Not at all. That's
the short answer, right?
I was totally oblivious. All right. I knew she worked really hard and had, a following of students, but I had no idea about the depths of her impact on, society, on women, on, African Americans, and just pushing everything forward for engineers. No idea whatsoever. And it's funny you phrased it that way, because on the podcast that we're actually that spearheaded this, one of the questions she asked me was, so how was it, being there when, all this was going on? I said, oh, that was my brother. I missed all that. And she was like, oh, yeah, I guess I said, yeah, I was 10, 15 years, well, at least 10 years after, all the fun stuff happened. So, yeah, I was oblivious, girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. Did Milton, your brother, my other first cousin, did Milton know kind of what was going on? Did he grasp the depth of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was front and center on everything, knew what she was up to, knew all of the, NASA trips and all of that. So she was, they even watched all the launchings together.
The launches. Yeah.
The NASA rocket.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was
Right.
He knew everything. I was the clueless one.
Okay. So I'm going to just go through a list. I'm going to pull up my notes here because it's such a long list, and I'm not going to go through everything because she really was incredible. First woman to receive a mechanical engineering degree from Howard University. First African-American woman engineer hired at Frankfurt Arsenal Gauge Lab. First African-American member of the Society of Women Engineers. First African-American woman engineer hired at Radio Corporation of America, also known as RCA, in the Electronic Tubes Division. First woman engineer hired as an instructor at Tennessee State University. And the list goes on and on. So, you mentioned NASA, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit first about her educational journey. Because her parents, so first of all, your mom was born here in Houston.
I know, right? Didn't know that.
I know. It's like, oh my God. Okay, so she was born here in Houston. Right. And her parents, talk a little bit about your grandparents, your mom's parents, and how they raised her to go after her educational dreams.
So it's a very compelling story, and just one little thing. My brother Milton, your cousin, is writing a book, and he's just got that artistic drive. So that's his foray. Yeah. Mine is all visual and podcast, like what we're doing. So this is my little bubble. But his book even enlightened me a little bit more because there were some aspects of her growing up that I truly believe were paramount to what she was able to accomplish and actually, pioneer through. Specifically, one, when she was super young, she had, let me backtrack. She was born left-handed. So back then, thank God that we grew up as a society, but back then the nuns at the school said, no, you don't write left-handed, you write right-handed. So learn to write right-handed. Well, and every time she wrote with her left hand, she got, a little paddle. So she learned to write right-handed. Well, that's where she began to stutter. And that was part of what took her inward and then eventually, led her down a path that we all know as this great pioneer and trailblazer, because what happened was she stopped talking because of all the teasing from the kids. Well, the teacher wrote to the parents, was like, hey, there's something going on, assuming it was something at home.
Hello.
Not even oblivious to the fact that this child is being bullied and teased at school. So, long story short, my grandfather, Pop, her dad, sat her down. It's like, so why are you inward? Why are you not talking at school? It's like, well, I'm being teased. And he was like, well, okay, so how do we fix this? How do we fix this? What can we do? And she was like, well, I could go to another school. We could talk to the teacher and tell the teacher what's going on and have her intervene. He's like, or you can learn to talk slowly and let your brain catch up to what you're trying to say. And that's the path they chose. That's exactly what she did. So, she managed the stuttering versus running away from the problem. And I think that was the first pivotal experience where, number one, she had support. She could have done any three of those. The parents were going to support her any way she went. But the one that she chose, they supported her through. She was able to excel through because she graduated early from high school. So graduated so early that they were like, you can't go to college at 16. So we're going to send you to Boston to a Latin school, take 2 more years of schooling, and then go to college. Yeah. But I think that level of support and just breaking down the problem to see how we can fix it so you can thrive is pivotal into.
It is, because that's how she lived her life. I mean, that's what she did. She just looked at things from a different perspective. If there's no problem, you can't solve a problem. It's because you're not looking at it the right way.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you shared that story. That there are a lot of lessons in there for parents, as we raise children and try to help them thrive in an environment that's challenging on whatever level it is. So many great lessons there. So she finished it at the Boston Latin School, and then she was accepted to
University
of Louisville.
Yes.
And then they found out
She was Black.
that she was Black. And they said, oops, sorry, we didn't really mean it. You can't come here.
But luckily, she had Hortense, my grandmother, her mother, as a mother, who was like, oh, but no. Oh, but no. And Hortense, basically, both parents, but mainly Hortense led the drive for getting in front of the issue of, you've accepted her, so if you're not going to let her come here, there needs to be compensation. We're just not going to walk away and go somewhere else. And she pushed hard enough where they basically, University of Louisville paid for her to go to whatever school she wanted to that accepted, Black kids. And that's how she ended up at Howard on a full tuition.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And it's one of those things, Linda, that as you learn the story and you just hear of the things she had to overcome, and then the next hurdle, and then the next, it just kept coming.
So there, that first one, that's obvious racism. Right. Okay. I mean, she was accepted based upon her academics, and they didn't realize they were accepting a Black woman. And then when they realized it, they said, okay, you can't come here. Then she goes to Howard and she excels. And then she faces sexism.
And then sexism, because she was the only female in the graduating engineering class. They're like, oh yeah, no, you can't walk because you're female. So we'll give you your degree in the president's office. So there she is again, accomplished, doing things. And they say, oh yeah, no, not good enough. Not good enough.
One story after another. But how did she approach each situation when she was faced with something like that? What was her philosophy to get through that? And then how did she teach that to you and Milton?
So her philosophy, and it's brilliant, is recognizing that the problem, it really isn't with me. It's with you. It's your perception. It's your made up tradition. It's whatever you're thinking is what's holding me back. And so basically she always said, if something is, obviously wrong, racism or sexism, that's their problem. And my job is to actually figure out how to get to where I want to be or do or accomplish in spite of that. And just go around the corner, go through the door, go under the door, open another window, figure out another way. And that's basically back to that whole thing of breaking down the problem. The problem is I want to get from A to B and you're standing in my way. How do I get around you? Because you're wrong. You're wrong. The kids were bullying her, not because she wasn't smart, not because she wasn't sweet, because they had a perception that stutterers were stupid. And so we're going to make fun of you. Well, that's their problem. That wasn't the reality. That was their problem. So she figured out how to work around it to get to where she wanted to be, excelled, graduated early. Same thing with this.
Yeah. So let's take that same approach. And I'm thinking about how we apply that to the challenges that we're facing as a society today. Racism is, for a while it was underground. Now it's back out in the open, in our faces. So many challenges that are related to racism and sexism right now. How do you think your mom would approach getting around all of those issues and problems with the same idea that the problem is not me, the problem is you. The problem is your perception of me as an African American, and your perception is that because I'm African American and because I'm a woman, that I am less than, that I am not deserving of.
Yeah, I believe she actually emulated it, throughout her career, pushing the boundaries, just saying, no, that's not right, and not accepting that perception, not accepting your label, not accepting the fact that what you are saying is true, or what you are believing is true. It is not. And that was one thing that I really did get kind of embedded in me, as far as understanding if it's wrong, it's just wrong. It's no way around it. You can't make it sound, right. You can't make it. You just can't make it right just because of sugarcoating a title, changing the verbiage. It's still wrong. And so by recognizing that and understanding that, then you move forward. You don't sit here. Right. And that's where I think she was able to help so many people, especially the students, because things would happen. Now, some of the things that happen to students were their own fault. Let's say they didn't finish the exams or finish the paperwork that they had to turn in. So those issues they had to own, but there was still a way to figure out how to move forward instead of sitting on the
sitting in it.
And I think that's what she did. She never sat in the mess. She was like, look, yeah, it's not right. Yeah, we don't like it. Yeah, you messed up. Let's move on. Because sitting here, what are we accomplishing? Nothing. Except reliving the pain, reliving the sadness, reliving the injustice. Move on. How do we move forward? And I think that was truly why she was able to be the pioneer in so many facets, because she just kept moving.
Can you think of a time in your life when you were growing up when you were made to feel like the other for whatever reason? When you brought that situation home and your mom and dad helped you deal with it, does anything stand out in your mind as in terms of what that situation was and how you felt in the moment, and then how you used those lessons learned from that instance to show up in the world today?
Yeah. There are probably a few that, I was, so let me switch. Let me rephrase this answer I was going to give you. So living in that household with her as a mother, and daddy was a biochemistry professor. So, there's a whole lot of dialogue going on, always talking. And I was never more proud to be her daughter when, and so happy she was my mother. One time when I was at college, I came back home for the summer and had, I just destroyed calculus, just failed it like the day is long, or every 24 hours, there was an F there for me in calculus. And I was destroyed. Okay. So let's talk about going home.
In that household. With S. Oh my goodness.
So,
girl, you must have been shaking in your boots.
I took the slow boat home. I mean, like, is she here yet? Where's she? So, long story short, I was like, Mom, I got to tell you, I got my grades, and, calculus I didn't do well in calculus. And she's like, well, how bad did you do? And I was like, I failed, I'm crying, just all of the sadness. And she was like, okay. And so that was clue number one, that, okay, this maybe won't be as bad as I thought. She said, okay. She said, did you understand anything? I said, well, a little bit, but, and she said, well, and so here we go. What was the problem? I said, well, the teacher was this, and all kind of useless excuses. The reality The reality was, it was an 8:00 class.
Okay. And you're not a morning person.
So there was no hope for me, really. Anywho,
Right.
and she was like, all right, honey. All right, so look, we can fix this. You have to take the class over. I said, but I'll have an F. She said, no, you won't. If you take it this summer and then get a better grade, they can replace it, and it'll be, it'll either flush out to a C, or if they allow to accept the credit, they can replace it. And I said, oh, really? You can do that? And she's like, yeah, girl. I was like, okay, let's do that.
Let's do that, Mom. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Obviously, she knew much more about matriculation than I did. I had no clue. And she's like, no, we can fix this, but you're going to have to obviously, do the work. And it worked out great. I took it during the summer and it was all fine. But yeah, that was one of the times oh, I'm so glad she's my mom. She knows what to do.
You do not want to take a failing math grade home to two professors that are in science and engineering, right? But I love how she handled that. And clearly it had an impact, and it stuck with you, and it helped inform how you move through something like that. This episode is brought to you by BMW of West Houston.
Hi, this is Robert Ory, the 7-time NBA champ, also known as Big Shot Bob. BMW of West Houston has provided me and my family with the best service and the best experience for years. BMW has been there for me and my family for years, so much so that it has convinced my wife to switch over from a former brand to BMW, and she loves it. BMW has been the car to drive. It is the ultimate driving experience.
We mentioned earlier your mom's work with NASA, which was in multiple ways, but I think the one that when I heard about it and we were talking about it, is like she helped design the box that the moon rocks came back from. I mean, what?
I know, right. And yeah, who knew?
She worked on the box that the moon rocks were carried in, coming back from the moon to Earth.
Yep. And
oh my
gosh. Know. And I mean, it's one of those things of once you figure that, and I mentioned in the other podcast, she said, we were just talking about something, and she well, yeah, when I was at NASA, we had to do that when we were working on the Saturn V and the rocket and the moon box. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? What?
Say what? Huh? Come again?
Say NASA? And she's like, well, yeah, I worked at NASA and Oak Ridge, and I started naming out. So I said, okay. Let's go back 1 second, because you can't just say that like, pass me the potatoes and I worked at NASA. So that's when I figured out that she was a badass, and I needed to do some digging, because she was super humble about it. So that's kind of why it was just another day, another work, another job, another opportunity. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even the article in Ebony, when I found out she had the article in Ebony, I was like, what? Where's that? What? And it was a whole thing. Obviously, when the heyday when she was working at NASA, that got out. Somehow Ebony got a hold of it, and they did like a 6-page expose on it. And I was like, can I see it, please? Please, pretty please.
I think what is so instructive about this story for me personally, and I think for all of us, is to recognize the value of the history that we have within our families, and how important it is to document it, archive it, and make sure that we carry it forward for everyone. And I am kicking myself that for a couple of things. One, that I have not done that to the degree, especially being a journalist and a storyteller. I did not do that to the degree that I should have with my mom, who now has Alzheimer's and is not able to share a lot of that with me. I still know a lot, but I could have dug deeper. I could have done more. And then I think, finding out about my family members, like your mom, whom I grew up adoring, and, and she and my mom, of course, were first cousins, and they were very close. very close. And your mom would always call me if she couldn't get my mom. She's like, "Where's Anita? You know, how's she doing? I need to get in touch with her." I mean, just the most loving, wonderful, giving person. But it kills me that I didn't know more sooner and that I didn't do my own interview with your mother. And then I find out that in 1997, she came back to Houston when I was actually on the air. I was an anchor at the NBC station here, and I did not know what was going on with this story. So, so the backstory, you begin the backstory. You know what I'm talking about,
the
right?
Society of Women Engineers, she integrated that. So she was the first Black, they're all females, but so she was the first Black individual in the organization. And they had a national convention scheduled for Houston. And I don't remember the name of the hotel, but they showed up. And she was obviously in the entourage, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't allow Black folks to stay here." And they were like, "Okay, well, we're going to pull the conference." And she was like, hold up, let's not be, drastic. A lot of people have planned a whole lot of stuff to get us here, so let's figure something else out that'll work. Luckily, my aunt Constance
Right.
Houston Thompson lived there, and she was like, "Yeah, come stay with me. Love to see you, and we'll just shuttle you back, and we'll drive you back and forth. No worries." So the plan was or the compromise was that she didn't spend the night at the hotel, but she was actually able to attend all the conference events. But she had to be escorted everywhere. So
including
to the ladies' room. So they decided amongst themselves, like, you know what, if you're gonna put those, limits or whatever you on us, then everyone's gonna know we're here. And so they took her everywhere. I mean, I'm surprised she even was able to attend the conference and get anything from it, because she said every time anybody needed to go to the restroom, you'd get a snack, go for a smoke break, take a phone call. They were asking her to come with her, just so that it was obvious. It was probably like
to make
more than her
to make the point. Yes, to make the point. Okay, fast forward to 1997. X number, what was it, like 20 years, 30 years later?
Yes.
Yeah, 1997, and
they finally go
pick it up from there. They go back to the same hotel.
And it was one of those, I guess, pivotal moments. Two reasons. One, obviously, because of the history of the incident, but also she was being honored as the Distinguished Educating Engineer of the Year. So there was a whole lot of pomp and circumstance around her, and it was great because she was able to kind of enjoy flourishing in spite of what they were trying to do to her, way back when.
Right. Which is, oh my gosh. And then you mentioned Aunt Constance, and Hortense Houston Thompson was her own force. That's a whole nother family story that we'll have to get into at another time. But, oh my gosh. But I'm in the middle now of really doing a lot of research on the family and the family history on mom's side, which is your side of the family, and then on my dad's side as well. So yeah. So it's just, oh my gosh. So before we go to our last section, which is switch it up, and you get to ask me a question or two. My last question is, now that your mom has passed on, she passed away in 2019. What do you think is the most cherished part of her legacy for you, not only as her child and as a Black woman, but just in general? What do you think is the most cherished part?
So I'll start with the in general first. As far as her legacy, I believe it's her students. She touched so many students as far as just excelling and just propelling them forward. She was a force, obviously. And, her push, even when they felt like the world's against me, she's like, no, it's not. We've got this. let's go. Let's go. We'll get around this problem and move forward. And so because she was a faculty advisor to the freshmen, she was able to get in there when they were babies, in college, and like, woe is me, I don't know what to do. And she's like, oh yeah, you do. No, woe is me. Here's a tissue, dry up your tears, let's move on. And so those students love her, still love her. I remember she moved in with us. She fell, broke her wrist, couldn't drive. So she moved in with us about 3 years before she passed. And by doing that, I was actually able to see the interactions that she had on a daily basis. And I promise you, those students called her on her birthday, sent her flowers on her birthday. I mean, just loved on her, which was great for me to see because I shared her so much with them. I mean, if she wasn't at home, she was at school. If she was at home, sometimes she's getting a phone call from a student saying, hey, this is what happened. What do I do? So, she co-parented these people. And so those, I believe, are her legacy because we had a 90th birthday for her before she passed, and they came in droves. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, Linda. It was beautiful. So that, I believe, is her legacy, just, making a way for others that feel like either they can't or are struggling with that whole process.
Yeah, yeah.
And then for me specifically, understanding who she is and the force of nature that she was really instilled in me the fact that, or showed me specifically, I can do anything. Period, point blank. I know in my heart of hearts, I can do anything. I have to decide what I want to do. But once that decision is made, I can do it. So no matter, what hurdles are going to jump in front of me, because there will be hurdles, because I still have that double minority. So it's not that the problems or the issues of the world have changed since she's come through. No, they are all still there and still prevalent in everyday life. But I know I can get through them. So that's what she left me with, a positive attitude of there's nothing I can't do.
Gosh, I love that. And I miss her, and I'm sure you do too. I'm sure you do too. Okay, time to switch it up. So now you get to ask me a question or two. It could be about anything we've talked about. It could be anything.
Okay, whatever. So my profession is pharmaceutical sales, and I am just enamored with what's going on with your daughter.
With my daughter,
Miss Lindsay.
Miss Lindsay. So Miss Lindsay is working for a company that is based in Dallas. It is a workday consulting company called Altura. And she's working remotely now. She lives here in Houston for the moment. And she is just, excited about what her future is going to be. She's planning to move to Austin, and she's amazing. She's amazing.
I'm so glad to hear that. I can't wait to see her. I can't wait to see her.
I know. It's been way too long. She's my light. She's my love.
Beautiful.
Just my precious girl.
And then the second question is, this podcast is amazing, and I love it, love it, love it. What is the next iteration? Where are you taking this? Where is this force of nature going? Because this is some stuff. So, where does this go from here?
That's a really good question. And it's a question I am really asking myself. It's at the forefront of my thinking right now, is what is next for this, and how do I evolve it into something bigger and more impactful. And I don't have the exact answer to that yet, but I'm working on it. I'm definitely working on it. This is my passion project. It's a part of, it's under the umbrella of my company, obviously. And, and I do, it's not how I make my living, is through this podcast. But it is how I feed my soul.
Fair enough.
And, but it's starting to make money, which is a good thing. And, if I had my way,
No.
I would just be doing this kind of interviewing, storytelling, film production work that speaks to our humanity and bringing us together across the board. I would be doing that full time.
So maybe bringing stories from your interviews that hit a niche, and maybe making full length feature films that speak to those stories.
That's a wonderful idea that has also crossed my mind. And it sounds to me like you and I need to have a conversation offline and figure out what the next step is for our Voices Matter podcast. You want to come to Houston and work with me, huh?
Just tell me when and I am there.
Oh my goodness. We may have a new partnership budding here in conjunction with our relationship as cousins.
Love it.
This has been so much fun, Carol. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this. And just thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure that our audience has links, of course, to the Lost Women of Science podcast that is celebrating your mom's incredible legacy. And just really want to make sure that everybody knows, those who don't know about her, that she is yet another hidden figure that we need to bring to the forefront. And it's my honor to do so in this very, very personal way. So thank you, my cousin, my friend. I love you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit of my family history with you. This was a really important podcast for me. I loved Yvonne dearly, and she was such a trailblazer, and she made a tremendous impact. And I'm really, really honored to be a member of her family and to be able to share a little bit of her story with all of you. Please go and listen to the incredible Lost Women of Science podcast, not only about her, but all of the great work that they are doing over there to uncover the lost women of science. They really are doing tremendous work. Thank you again for being a part of the Our Voices Matter podcast audience. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, and then join us again. We'll see you next time. Thanks again to our sponsor, BMW of West Houston. There's a special offer for members of the Our Voices Matter podcast community. Just click the link in the show notes, bmwwest.com.